You've done something different, right? You've taken a business and you've listed it in the stock market, right?
December the 11th, we IPO'd. We wouldn't be doing all of that if there wasn't a Bitcoin story behind it. This is the first time in human history that there has ever been a mathematically scarce asset. I'd been building up a cash reserve in the business and intuitively feeling like that cash reserve was devaluing by a minimum of 5%. And when the government said we are going to print money and pay people to stay at home to delay the economic shock of what's happening, I saw, okay, this is the moment for that asset class, because we've now locked in and pretty much guaranteed serious inflation over the next decade. They've doubled the money supply effectively. So I made the decision in 2021 to begin allocating Bitcoin. I am absolutely certain that Bitcoin will always be worth more in the future than it has ever been worth in the past over a long period of time. I really believe that the UK is beginning to feel suffering from the effects of inflation.
What's true wealth to you, Scott? Hey, Scott, welcome to the podcast. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Alan.
Down from Leeds, down from Yorkshire today.
Down from Yorkshire for a few days in the big smoke.
Excellent. Always good to see you. Now, as you know, this is a business podcast. Often I speak to entrepreneurs who founded a business, scaled up, and had an exit. Often they've sold out to a competitor or a strategic buyer or private equity. You've done something different, right? You've taken a business and you've listed it in the stock market, right?
Yeah, recently, December the 11th, we IPO'd, listed on the Aquis stock market. And I suppose it's not necessarily an exit. It's more of a change in the business setup in order to accelerate the growth of the business. And I plan to stay with it. But yeah, slightly different to the usual.
That is definitely different. Fascinating, really, really interesting. I'm always keen to understand what I call the founder's journey, founder's story. Take me back to how you got started. What was your early stages as an entrepreneur and a founder?
I suppose that starts just before I set the business up. So I came out of university and decided that I wanted to enter executive recruitment.
Okay. Reason
being is a lot of the options at that stage were graduate schemes, good basic salaries, maybe a company car, that type of thing. And executive recruitment was a small basic salary. I think £13,000 a year was my first basic salary. But the opportunity to earn as good as you were.
Right.
And for someone in my early 20s, I saw that as the right kind of meritocratic environment where it's like, right, how good are you? That's how much you'll get paid. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how experienced you are. And I went into that, and over the first 12 months, I became very successful in the second half of that year. So the last 6 months, it clicked for me.
Right.
And I had a client who I'd been working with for maybe 3 months, and cold call, quite repeat work with them. And they were quite impressed with me, and they wanted to buy a company. So this company, long story short, they'd gone into liquidation. This competitor of theirs owed creditors a lot of money, but my client had the insurance to ensure that they could soak up some losses, but gain all the clients by looking after them and making sure they stayed as clients. Couldn't get hold of a guy, and I got a call from him at lunch saying, can you get a hold of this person? Nobody in the business can. I want to buy his company. And through a convoluted effort of finding out where his holiday property was and calling the holiday rental company to get hold of his wife at the time, and then convince his wife to get the owner of this business on the phone, the client and me, we got all three of us on the phone. He bought the business that day. And that client, I think, was quite impressed with me. I must have been 22, 23, and flew me out to Spain as a, come and work for me.
Right.
I want to make you an offer. And I kept saying no. And I went out to Spain, and he took me out on his boat called Loose Change, which is a very sort of, not necessarily the name I'd pick for a yacht, not that I plan on buying one, but he was quite a charismatic guy.
Right.
And he offered me a role with a pilot's license, come buy companies for me, carry on doing my headhunting for me. So I took the opportunity and spent.
All right, you took the role, you took the job?
Yeah, I did 3 months in Spain, flying planes, waiting to start the job. Started the job. We bought a couple of companies. I didn't have the experience to know how to do the due diligence and didn't have the experience to know how to integrate a business into a larger company. But I was getting the exposure to it all and learning fast. And by the end of that 12 months, we'd done enough that I didn't have enough to do. We'd kind of got to the point where it's like, okay, we've had a great start, but we don't need to buy any more companies now. Can you just help us with the headhunting? And I said to him, I'll do that, but if you carry on paying my basic salary and leave me with the company car and stuff, I'll just split the revenue with you. But I want to set up my own business. I've got enough time on my hands, and you can still have the benefit of me working for you when I'm really needed. So that's how it started. And I made a call on a Tuesday night to a client and a candidate, and they hired them on the Wednesday. And I thought, right, this is what I'm built to actually do. So I started the business at that point, just in the kitchen. And after 6 months, agreed to keep him as a client, but do this as
Okay,
as
so
a
that was your
full-time thing.
early stage. That was your journey, your sort of entry point to, and it's like executive recruitment. That is the job, the role, the business, right?
Yeah.
So what is it now? So you formed a company, right? Yeah. What's it called?
So the flagship, if I just rewind a little bit there, the IPO with our listing is XCE, Connecting Excellence Group PLC.
Yeah.
Now, the business I refer to there that I started at that moment back in 2014 is our flagship operating business called Spencer Riley, which makes international executive level placements, does 70% of our revenue overseas, and works with the likes of the Big Four, some of the big consulting firms, logistics firms, construction companies, and AI intelligence software businesses we've had a lot of work with in the last 12 months. So a very traditional
Traditional executive
company
recruitment
has grown out of that.
I understand. I think you and I spoke a while ago, and you were telling me that recruitment, I don't know too much. I mean, I've used executive recruitment in my own business to hire people. You said it is super competitive. There's a lot, even you're in Leeds, right? But even in there, there's, I don't know, dozens of recruitment companies just in that town alone.
Yeah, I mean, in preparation for the IPO, we had to verify all information, all statements that I made. So there are over 35 direct competitors within a couple of miles of where our office is based. And that was as a result of, I suppose, a business, I think late 80s, 90s, started in Leeds, was extremely successful and had a management buyout. And I suppose that leads us to where the problems are for owners of businesses today. They did a management buyout, and lots of companies spawned off the side of that management buyout. And it kind of grew in that city centre where if we're competing for business in North Carolina with a new client, quite often the client will say, we're also getting a quote from, and they'll be next door or across the road. Or
is Leeds a real centre for executive recruitment?
It's the world's epicenter for international executive recruitment in the style that we do it. There's a lot goes on in London, don't get me wrong, but
interesting.
Yeah, I think Leeds is
that's the thing. There's a lot of competition. This is an interesting thing. The other thing I want to ask you about, I've had I think 2 recruitment people on this podcast in the past. One in particular that comes to mind is a guy called Mike Ames. I don't know if you know him, but he's and he built actually 2 different recruitment companies, scaled it up quite well, and sold out for significant sum of money. But I remember him saying to me at the time, he said that is quite unusual. There's only like 1 or 2% of recruitment companies really create scale and enterprise value. And he sort of explained to me the reason for that is, you're only as good as your team and the people who are billing all these clients, and they can sort of you to sell the business, but those people can walk out the door and go down the road. Is that an issue or a challenge in the recruitment industry, like creating real enterprise value in a business?
That's a huge challenge, and that's partly what I believe we are solving with what we've done with the IPO and the group structure, because if I take you through just after I've started the business and it's me, what's the challenge? The challenge is actually attracting people to the business who can generate revenue. Now, if you're a small business and you're privately owned, it's hard to attract talent internally that are already billing £300,000 per annum, £500,000 per annum, £800,000 per annum. It's hard to draw them into the business when there's one of you and you've started, because but naturally they're looking at it saying, well, why don't I settle by myself?
Right.
The benefits and the reasons people don't is the basic salary, the security. But as you're growing and you're developing from 2014 to 2020, our challenge was we were not in the right location.
Right.
And the fees that we were doing were in the UK predominantly at the start. So we adapt to say, right, okay, we'll start working overseas. Now they're overseas. Coming to Leeds in 2020, a week before COVID, and it's set a scalable platform and then grow. The biggest challenge in growing is attracting high billing members of staff.
Right.
Now, when you say about low amount of businesses exiting, the biggest challenge in exiting is if a competitor speaks to another competitor and says, hey, I'd like to buy your business, and the staff within that company know that that competitor is potentially merging or buying that business,
Right.
they will tend to gravitate towards the stronger of the two and have a conversation with the CEO and say, before you buy the business, by the way, I'm doing £800,000 of revenue and my friend over there is doing
Right.
500,000. Why don't me and you cut a really strong deal where we can join your company? Now, there's competition clauses and all that,
Right.
but it's hard to lock in the value because the revenue is the people and the quality of the people in the business. So you do rarely see competitors buy competitors. And you rarely see private equity firms come into the market and buy a company and it be successful.
Right.
Quite a lot of our best hires we've been bought by a private equity firm. They've come in, they've looked at the numbers, they've told us that they want to change the commission scheme and that we should target only these types of clients. And it's not the same as it was.
Those guys and girls leave.
So they leave and they join a business that understands the market a bit better and can and effectively really values them and wants them in the business. So it's tough.
Yeah, interesting. So there are some real, I guess, like structural challenges in specifically the recruitment and the executive recruitment, and particularly in your time, where there seems to, as you say, the epicenter. So creating enterprise value, scaling, attracting and retaining the right sort of people, right? That's a challenge, and based on everything that you've said. So just sort of moving the whole thing forward, I'm trying. There's a few different strands to this story. You saw that as an issue, obviously ambitious, wanted to scale and grow and create proper enterprise value in your business. And at the same time, you begin to understand this kind of emerging technology at the time. So let's sort of get into that now. So this is your kind of Bitcoin awakening, which is going to obviously a very important part in this story.
Yeah, we wouldn't be a public entity right now, and we wouldn't have a board with chairman from Pension Advisory Trust and a non-exec director who's ex-Goldman Sachs and reporting into the Winklevoss twins for Facebook, the alleged inventors of Facebook.
Yeah.
Sorry if you're watching that.
He always tunes in.
Yeah. Well, we had to obviously get sign-off for our non-exec director, Vijay Selvam, who wrote a great book on the subject of the novel technology Bitcoin. He is chief counsel over there, so we had to obviously get sign-off from them guys, so they might tune in, Alan. But then we've got board advisor of Swiss hedge fund, largest hedge fund, or largest launch of a hedge fund in Switzerland over the last 10 years, which is Bitcoin denominated around the novel technology that you speak of. Now, we wouldn't be doing all of that if there wasn't a Bitcoin story behind it. And a lot of people coming into space might be more familiar with the term digital asset. But how do you combine a balance sheet with Bitcoin on it and an operating business and operating growth? Well, my story started, personally, you've got to find that technology first. In 2016, I discovered Bitcoin, and it probably took me 12 months. 2017, it starts really, the basics click of like, okay, this is the first time, if everything I'm reading is correct, and you need to do a lot of studying to verify that it's correct, and it's hard to find good material on that. But if what I'm understanding is correct, this is the first time in human history that there has ever been a mathematically scarce asset that everybody who chooses to do so can verify how many are in existence, what wallets they are in, and what transactions have happened from the start of that asset class to today. That's a powerful thing when you start thinking deeper, because when you look at any other asset, gold, silver, property, stocks, shares, when demand exponentially increases, the supply increases as well. And with Bitcoin, it doesn't matter how much demand comes into the asset class, the supply will not increase. That changes the dynamic. The fact that it's unconfiscatable and you can transfer it anywhere in the world without anyone's permission, no central bank's permission, no private bank's permission, no government's permission, it's unstoppable, the transfer of it, means that when you look at Britain now, I'm back in 2017. I'm thinking, I wasn't thinking at the time if people want to leave Britain due to significant
Yeah.
taxes and,
Yeah.
and difficulties in preserving your wealth in the country. But it becomes more apparent this year. But I was thinking, if you're in a country that suffering from hyperinflation, suffering from war, or sanctions. I mean, you look at Russian oligarchs who wanted to move their money out of Russia and move it to Monaco.
Yeah.
The fact that that asset is unconfiscatable and transferable anywhere makes it easy to move across borders. So limited supply, unconfiscatable and easy to move across borders made me think, okay, this is interesting for me personally.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that it was your own personal journey. You think, well, you're making money, you're making a bit of profit in your business. And I guess, so you just went on a kind of a journey of discovery, learning. You heard about Bitcoin, you thought, what's it all about? And you begin to learn for yourself.
Yeah.
Your own family, just, preserving and building wealth.
And I think I treated it as like my personal balance sheet. How can I simplify my life outside of a business? I don't want to be checking on stocks and shares.
Yeah.
I don't want to be buying a safe to store gold. I don't want to be investing in multiple properties. I've done that with a buy-to-let property. It cost me a lot of time.
Yeah.
It cost me a lot of energy. There's a lot of third parties involved in it with the lawyers, the solicitors. It takes time out of the business. So how do I find the simplest asset that I can allocate my capital to over the long term that I believe will go up in value over the long term? Now, when it came to the business, very similar mindset. So if you can imagine, you've had 4 years where you've bought Bitcoin for the first time at a low, £1,000 to £3,000. You've watched it ramp up to 17,000 and thought, I really have got this right. I've worked it out.
Yeah. I'm a genius.
Then I'm a genius. And then you've watched it drop all the way back down to £5,000. And you're like, maybe I'm not a genius.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a good asset though. And maybe over the long term, more and more people are going to understand why. My convictions built through them darker years, if you like.
Sure.
So when we came into 2020, we'd moved the executive recruitment firm into Leeds City Centre, set the platform to grow, and we were hit with, I daren't say the word, but we were hit with an economic shock and shutdowns to businesses and everybody told to stop.
Yep.
At that exact moment, I'd been building up a cash reserve in the business and intuitively feeling like that cash reserve was devaluing by a minimum of 5%. I think 10% would probably still be gracious. 10% per annum devaluing of the cash reserve. And when the government said, every government around the world, we are going to print money and pay people to stay at home to delay the economic shock of what's happening, I saw, okay, this is the moment for that asset class because we've now locked in and pretty much guaranteed serious inflation over the next decade. They've doubled the money supply effectively in a very short period of time. So I made the decision in 2021 that it was in the best interest of the staff, best interest of the business, and would allow the business a platform to become resilient, to begin allocating the balance sheet to Bitcoin in 2021 and had the exact same process. I wouldn't have been able to do it had I not already been through it personally. But if you remember in 2021, it was about 51,060.
Yeah.
And we had that period afterwards. So.
Yeah, exactly. I find this really interesting because you went on this journey yourself, just finding out about it. You were doing well, you were successful, making profits. And like most businesses, you hold cash in the bank. You I guess you pay yourself income, dividends, or what have you, but the surplus capital, your balance sheet, is held in your bank account. And you're beginning to think, and I'm not sure many people thought that all through at the time. So a lot of people I was talking about, business owners, they hadn't necessarily thought. It was almost just something that they accepted. I know I'm going to get robbed. I mean, interest rates went to zero, right?
Yeah.
And inflation ramped up. And the other thing I think about is that, the published RPI, CPI inflation rates, well, that's not really applicable to businesses because you think about all the other costs that go up, your staff costs go up, rents, rates, electricity, taxes, etc. go up. So your actual business inflation rate, I think, is more like closer to 10%, I think. So you had the foresight to think that through and think, I don't really want to sit here with my business and have my capital kind of melting like an ice cube, the money that, so you've gone down this route, you've identified it. And to be fair, even now, it's still considered to, well, it's unusual, isn't it, for businesses to increasingly becoming more popular, but very few businesses still will hold Bitcoin on their business balance sheet. Talk me through how that worked out for your company. I mean, did you have other shareholders in the business?
I was fortunate that I was the 100% shareholder,
Right.
so I was able to make that decision because I've been through the personal journey for 4 years. As soon as I'd decided, okay, we'll allocate to Bitcoin on the company balance sheet, I was able to make that decision. It just meant I didn't have to ask permission. I just had to tell the management accountants and tell certain people in the business that I was doing it. And then you said, how's it worked out?
Yeah.
Well, the drawdown after that, we were consistently buying every week because of my earlier conviction in the asset and my earlier experience. We could do that, and I can talk to you about the numbers on that. But when you mention about UK businesses, there are more and more businesses starting to allocate as private entities, not publicly disclosing that they're doing that, as you can hold it as an intangible asset on your balance sheet and just allocate. And they might start with a very small percentage allocation and begin building their own conviction and confidence in it. And there's the guys at the Bitcoin Business Network have had a rapid growth in memberships recently.
Bitcoin Collective.
Bitcoin Collective set up the Bitcoin Business Network.
Right, okay.
And I think they're up to 60 members, but there's inquiries going through them. I know them quite well. And obviously there's a public business with Bitcoin on our balance sheet now with Bitcoin strategy combined with an operating business that is a people networking business, if you like. Sure. I've got a good relationship with them and they're seeing inquiries from businesses you really wouldn't expect. But in the UK, I think there's £230 billion worth of cash held in business bank accounts. If that cash if we split that cash over the last 5 years and we bought an amount every week with that 230 billion, the return today, even though the price isn't that much higher than it was in 2021, the return on that would have been 130%, which would mean the SME businesses holding the 230 billion cash would have over 500 billion value now. That 230 billion cash has actually decreased in purchasing power in relation to what the businesses are buying, the electricity, the energy, and staff's wages. So I think it's critical to say that studying the asset class is it's a risk not to study it.
This is the unique thing, I think, and particularly for this podcast, which is generally designed around SME, sort of small to medium-sized businesses, which are absolutely feeling the pain of this. All the usual challenges that we know about and are well discussed, but those which are successful and make profit and they store profit for a rainy day or to pay future bills or whatever, there is this ongoing sort of feeling of unease that it's just kind of I'm losing net of the prevailing rate of inflation and of course business bank accounts tend to get far lower rates available on sort of bank savings accounts, etc., than retail customers do as well, because banks know it's a captive audience. So I just find this really intriguing that you were pretty early to the game, particularly as it relates to your business. But I'm also interested. I mean, I guess you've got like a regular accountant or people who file your tax returns and what have you. What was the story when you had to tell them? They go, "What the hell?" Yeah.
I've coached them over the years.
Right, okay.
But yeah, a regular management accountant who's a specialist in my industry, in executive search, our partners as management accountants. I suppose the key to making sure that implementing a Bitcoin balance sheet strategy is that it's a long-term store of value. Like you've got to be looking at a minimum of 4 years, but ideally 8, 10, ideally forever, because at some point in the future you'll be able to use it as collateral and borrow against it and all this type of thing. And explaining that thesis to them at the start in 2021, the price was up at 51,000 British pounds, I think, or dollars. And in the month after, it went to 60 odd, and they said, it's a good idea, Scott. We like the plan. Yeah. And then a few months later, it drew all the way down, kind of slowly, but quite dramatically. It drew all the way down to 16,000.
From 60?
From 60,
down to 16. That's a big drawdown. Yeah.
I remember I had an automatic buy that was daily throughout that period. Right. So, as you can imagine, once it got to 16, there were serious questions from a management accountant on, are you going to continue this strategy?
Yeah.
And because I've been in the space personally for 4 years. My conviction is at the point where I can look them in the eye and say, I am absolutely certain that Bitcoin will always be worth more in the future than it has ever been worth in the past over a long period of time. And over the long run, the volatility will continue to draw down in that it will become less volatile and less volatile the more adoption and corporate adoption begins to be seen. Now, at the moment, you would probably say, I think between 0.5 and 3% of people and businesses having a true understanding and high conviction in the asset class would be generous.
Right. It's really small.
Yeah, it's really small, which means that it can be volatile. Right. But I don't think there's ever been a point in its history where if you've been buying every day or every week for 4 years, you're not sizably up
ahead.
And it's about holding it, not trading it.
I get that, but honestly, it must have been when you're tracking that down from 60 to 50 to 40 to 30 to 20 to 16. Was there doubts in your mind at some point? You say, presumably, your management accountants asking you questions, but other people around the business or your family.
So the person who really sort of went through it and wasn't a Bitcoiner, because there's zero doubts in my mind,
right?
And I think in the next 4 to 8 years, people will begin to see why and begin to understand why, as you see BlackRock's highest performing ETF.
But you do have to have, strength in your conviction going through that, because I can get it if someone owns some Bitcoin in their own account and they're playing the long game, what have you. But you've got a business, you've got a trading company that needs to, make profits, file tax returns, and all that sort of thing. And presumably you kept like liquid cash as well, just your bills to pay, and if the price has gone down of Bitcoin.
Yeah, we keep operating cash.
Right.
It just meant previously we'd keep cash reserves and it would just be cash. And you're kind of looking at it saying you're guaranteed that it's going to lose purchasing power over the next 4 years.
Yeah.
With Bitcoin, I've got a high conviction that it's going to provide a significant return over a 4 to 8 year period. But even at the, I suppose, stage where you're talking about, I'm having conversations with management accountants, friends, family. I'm banging the same drum from 2016 with everybody outside of a business anyway, in my private life. Yeah. And I suppose my executive assistant and our operations manager, I suppose they're in a situation where they're not a Bitcoiner in their personal life, but they're seeing this journey. The rest of the staff in the business, I've made the decision that it's in their best interest for me to execute this strategy for 4 years. And I'm educating them every now and then, drip feeding information in that we say, right, we'll talk through the history of money, 1944 Bretton Woods, 1971 the Nixon shock, what actually controls the issuance of pounds and dollars.
You're running your training sessions for these
recruiters. And training sessions, they're asking for the information, to be fair. They're saying, look, some of them are on modest basic salaries, high commission. They're like, talk to us about assets.
Yeah.
And then we're talking about gold, property, stocks and shares, and Bitcoin. And that's the session in that, like, now you're giving a good comparison on what are the fundamental principles of each asset and getting to the point where then later on in 2024, after the ETF, I think, was launched by BlackRock, I had a session where we went through what it would have looked like if we'd have bought Bitcoin for the last 4 years, and what it would look like if we buy it for the next 4 years, and what it would look like if we hold it for 10. And when we went through the session, get to ending, you're kind of like, right, okay, so would anybody, if we could, have executed that strategy over the last 4 years? Everyone. Yeah, obviously. Well, I have. So that's what we have got.
Right.
And now
you revealed it to your team.
I revealed it to them in a
good news.
I saved you all the stress.
Yeah, right.
But we did do that, and that I'm 100% owner of the business. I chose that that's the best thing to do for the balance sheet, and went through that process with key members of the team aware and aligned with it, but not wanting to put because the emotional stress of that drawdown, if you're not fully convicted in the asset class, is the difficult thing that people need to kind of slowly learn and be more comfortable with the asset class. And then I've explained to them, right, this is what we're going to do going forward, and we're going to go to IPO, and this is how it's a benefit to you. This is how it's a benefit to our competitors.
Right.
And this is how we're going to scale the business from this point forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that there's like 2 or 3 different strands coming together, of which Bitcoin is the key theme throughout it. But there's some business advantages and opportunities in terms of your recruitment company as well. I read somewhere you said Bitcoin is not a get rich quick opportunity; it's a not get poor slowly opportunity.
Don't get poor slowly.
Most people are getting poor slowly.
Yeah.
And so they don't. It doesn't. It's not acute. They're not getting poor quickly, but it'd be painful. It's just slowly but surely over the years, your pound's going less and less distance really. So you're just trying to preserve that, just not necessarily get super rich, but just avoid getting poor. Yeah,
I suppose that's the thesis of Bitcoin. I think people who are not into Bitcoin usually have this sort of impression that people who are into Bitcoin are nerdy tech geeks or something along them lines, and it's simply not the case. When you attend events, it's quite often leaders within business. I was at an event recently with quite a senior guy from KPMG. I've just spoke to someone from one of the world's biggest consulting firms who'd approached me because of what we're doing in the business and said, if there's ever opportunities within this space, I'd be interested in looking at it. And people don't talk about it very often because in the media it can sometimes be portrayed negatively.
Sure.
And you're kind of putting yourself, and I've certainly had this conversation when you say about family, certainly had this conversation with a wife. As soon as you take the business public and you're actually stating that you have Bitcoin on the balance sheet, you're going to get criticism from either people who don't like it for whatever reason that might be, or don't understand it and don't really want to see it be used.
But you're used to that. You've got conviction. You've got thick skin. You get, you take the bullets, all the negative comments that come. Fair enough. So this is all interesting in terms of the backstory, putting all these things together, some issues and challenges about properly scaling a recruitment company. You got a lot of competition, attracting and retaining your own team of people who are billing all these fees, and then your personal and then business journey on Bitcoin, all these things coming together. So I'm really trying to get the moment at which you thought, right, I could actually do an IPO and publicly list this company so the general public can buy the shares in the business. Right. So tell me about the thought process and what led up to you actually doing that.
A quick pause. You might not be aware that this podcast is a passion project. It's born from my commitment to supporting entrepreneurs through the business stages of scaling up, selling, and then life on the other side. It's the same work we do at Capital Partners, our boutique wealth planning firm, which is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs to gain clarity around their money, their aspirations, and ultimately achieving financial peace of mind. With over 20 years' experience of working with business owners, our team brings deep insight, strategic thinking, and clarity to what can often be complex decisions. So what you're really looking for is a trusted advisor, someone who understands people like you and can offer thoughtful guidance at the intersection of business, family, money, and life. In other words, someone to act as your strategic thinking partner and your financial coach. So if that resonates, feel free to explore more. There's a link in the show notes to our website with tools and resources to support you on your journey. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah, so when I started buying Bitcoin, I'm thinking to myself, this will give us opportunities in the future, but I'm not sure right now in 2021 what those opportunities are going to be. I just know it's going to give us an advantage to have a very strong balance sheet with a strong asset on the balance sheet. So we got to 2024 or 23, and I had a conversation with someone well known in the space and said I might take the business public. Having seen MicroStrategy over the last 5 years, they own 700,000 Bitcoin, and we've really sort of focused in on being the digital credit specialist and digital capital specialist. Now we got to 2025, and Mr. Webley came on a Spaces with Tyler, and they launched SWC as a public business, and they've just gone on. I don't know how many weeks this will be to as they've just congratulations
a couple of weeks
to
ago.
them, just gone on to the London Stock Exchange. Now I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, okay, well, I've been buying Bitcoin in business for 4 years. And I've always known what the advantages to this business could be with that. So what's our strategy? And that paved the way through the regulatory woods for us to follow. And my strategy and our strategy of XCE Connect and Excellence Group is we solve some of the biggest problems in our industry and still deliver the service that we want to deliver. So we work with the likes of Big Four, work with big consulting firms, work with logistics firms. We work, 70% of our roles are international, but the consultants, the recruitment consultants in the business and in a lot of our competitors are 360 degree, we would say, in the industry, where it's their clients, it's their candidates, modest basic salaries, high commission. They're all in that same situation. How do you scale a business like ours? We have to attract experienced people to the business who can deliver revenue and profit. The way in which we can now do that is we've got a PLC status and we've got Bitcoin balance sheet strategy. So we're able to issue share options that are performance based. So you can have the same, let's say, same basic salary, same commission, but with an additional upside for people who join our business, in that you are powering the growth of the operating business's revenue and profit by joining, which should result in an increased value to the shares of the business. We are investing and buying an asset with surplus cash generated that we believe will compound at a 30% compound annual growth rate as a base
Is that
case.
your assumption for future
I think
growth
that's
of
the
Bitcoin?
industry assumption.
About 30%.
About
per
30%
annum on
compound
average.
annual growth rate.
Yeah.
And that usually looks in Bitcoin like that, but over a long average price, that it tends to track up over a 200-week moving average price. If you look at Bitcoin, it just steadily seems to rise.
Right.
In the short term, it can be volatile. So we offer share options based on performance, which is measured by revenue and profit, to people in the business and in order to attract people to the business. So we create a talent attraction vehicle that incentivizes people to join, motivates them to perform, and retains their talent over the long term as well.
So what they get, like options or something, shares in this now public listed business.
Long dated performance based share options.
Right.
So if you
tying them in,
so
in the long game,
to give you an example, a strong biller might bill £500,000 in a year.
Right.
The business may profit from that of, let's say, £200,000 net. We can allocate surplus cash to the asset, but by providing that performance, that individual will get some share options that will vest in 12 months' time, and over the next 12 months, they'll be incentivized to perform higher than they previously performed to earn some more share options, which will invest in the longer 12-month time period.
Got it, yeah.
So they're building up, much like lots of big public companies do, building up a vested interest in the business's performance and future that protects their own personal and family's future.
Right.
And ours is obviously operating business, Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and then the capital markets experience that we have on the board to drive value for everybody and everybody's value alignment from individuals in the company to shareholders and investors outside of the day-to-day company.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, let's face it, humans are driven by incentives, like what's in it for me, I think quite often. Have you therefore solved or attempting to solve this challenge in that you can have a great biller, billing £500,000, but potentially a competitor down the road can offer him better terms and he might just walk away. But now he or she's got an incentive to stick around because they own or will own future upside.
Yeah, they've got an incentive to join and perform and stick around.
So attraction and retention of key people.
Yeah, and we announced in January we had an incredible start to the year. We only IPO'd in December. And the team are highly motivated, to reach out to their network of other high billers and really start growing a platform for this business. Because in the future, the other problem for our industry that I believe this solves, right at the start, we talked about Mike Ames, who I'm aware of. I've never met Mike. I'll have to introduce me. I'd love to speak to him. Said how difficult it is for people to exit or prepare for an exit in executive recruitment,
enterprise value in a business.
Permanent placement. It's difficult. And a lot of people in the industry are in their 30s or their 40s. They run a business. They don't want to exit in the next 5 years. They might want to exit in the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Right.
And Bitcoin provides hope for the long term if you're on your personal kind of balance sheet and you're saving and you're like, I'm fundamentally believe my money will be worth more in the future than it is today. But from a business perspective, if you're owning a executive recruitment company and you've got cash on the balance sheet that's the opposite, and that you're guaranteed in 10, 20 years that the cash you're saving is not going to be worth as much as it is today, how do you drive value and lock value into that business?
It's hard.
It's tough. Now, we've built a platform where we're saying, if you want to do long-dated equity earn-out, a company that's a small business that's turning over, let's say, £5 million per annum, it's got £1 million cash in the bank, and it's making £1 million per year. And it's aligned with us and we're bought into the strategy. It can join the group. We'll switch the cash reserves into our Bitcoin reserves.
Right.
And then we'll use ongoing surplus cash to contribute to increasing the Bitcoin that is held. And you can now use to grow your business that can stay under the same brand, share options with a PLC that are effectively built to provide shareholder value, but also provide the incentive to help people join the business, motivate them to stay in the business. So now you can grow your business with your brand as you'd like to build it, with shared resources with the main group. And you can do a 5, 7, 10 year, okay, you might be looking at succession planning in 5 years, 7 years, that's linked directly to the performance of the business over that period of time, and build up the share options over that period of time to allow them to have the hope of a true exit where value is being locked in every year that they're delivering that value, rather than being somewhat gambled into the next year. If that's a nice way of putting it, is you're reinvesting the cash next year and you stay
I find
sort of
this
cash light.
it's really interesting. I think the fundamental thing of Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It's the assumption that that this asset, this whatever it is going to compound at, let's say, 30%. That's a game changer. Everything changes to that. If you just say, we will invest surplus capital in this business, in this asset, which is called Bitcoin, which tends to, we're making the assumption, everyone's making the assumption, that it compound at 30%. It doesn't take too much, 3, 5, 10 years out, those numbers begin to really stack up. So you can, I guess this is exactly what you're doing. You're putting forward a very compelling offer to both to hire people. Then, as you say, competitors can join in with you as well. I guess you could, should you choose to. I know you've got to be careful what you say as you're talking about literally a publicly listed company right now. But there's an opportunity, I would imagine, just to properly scale that, merge, acquire other businesses with this engine room in it, which is the Bitcoin and Bitcoin price.
Yeah,
right?
That is effectively what it is. It's talent attraction vehicle. We want to attract competitors in a friendly manner.
Yeah.
Like, you can join this mission that we're on and do exactly what you're doing as you're doing it. And we are built as a group to lock in the value over the long term, and we are focused on the long term. And by having, when you talk about 30% compound annual growth rate, when you have that kind of conviction in the asset class, it incentivizes you to make long-term decisions.
Sure, yeah.
And the way I kind of see the growth of the group from that point is we've also got the Bitcoin Treasury. So it's not just buying the Bitcoin. That as a PLC, you have to have a scalable capital markets team and also scalable governance and scalable practices and policies. So when I set out on the journey to go from private to public, it was, who are the team we want to build on the board of XCE, Connecting Excellence Group? And I'm sure you're familiar with, I think, Sam Roberts.
Yeah, I know Sam.
Is non-executive chairman. He is director of investment consulting at the first pension advisory firm to advise a Bitcoin allocation back when it was uncool. And he is very well connected globally within this asset class. Vijay Selvam, ex-head of governance at Goldman Sachs for Southeast Asia, but again, very much a Bitcoiner, wrote a great book on Bitcoin, works in the space. And then Richard Byworth, who launched the largest hedge fund in Switzerland in the last decade, I think, that's Bitcoin denominated. So we've built and then Angus Gladish, who's the CFO, who didn't come into the process as a Bitcoiner, came in at the skeptic stage and has spent time with us and spent time studying the asset as we went into the IPO process. He's got an experience of doing uplistings and preparing businesses for IPOs. So in the future, we'd like to scale the business and we've built a team and we built a platform that we believe we can then uplist at the appropriate time and at the appropriate objectives being hit. Now, with the capital market side, we've developed XCE Bitcoin bonds and launched a bond program, and that is geared to increase the business on the Bitcoin strategy side is geared to increase Bitcoin per share for shareholders and investors, which makes the operational side and the group on the operational side more powerful and more attractive for companies who are thinking of joining a group or people joining a group, and just gives us more opportunity again, I believe, in 4 or 5 years' time for considering actually international expansion where we may be remote people based overseas. At the moment, we already operate overseas from the greatest time zone in the world, Yorkshire.
Of course. Of course. But you could expand literally overseas, have locations, have offices, have premises in other places as you continue on this journey. I'm really interested in this, like an IPO, a listing. To me, it sounds complex, confusing, and expensive. What's the sort of brief headlines around that journey to, when was it? December. So only like a couple of months ago.
Yeah, December.
You got proper stock market listing it's on the Aquis Exchange.
It's on the Aquis Exchange, so it's available through all of the brokers. AJ Bell, Hargreaves Lansdown, Interactive Investor, and that was quite a challenge.
Anyone can buy shares in your business now.
Yeah, that was quite a challenge in itself in educating the brokers.
Right.
Yeah, of course. In that we've had a 4-year strategy where we've grown an executive recruitment company 30% plus compound annual revenue growth year on year for 4 years.
Right.
And we've just saved our money in a different currency, is how I'm explaining it to them, in a currency called Bitcoin that's not printed by a government and not issued by a central bank. That's it. We're just an executive recruitment company that's saving a different currency. So that education process to be able to launch on those platforms was a challenge in itself. Yeah. And then you've got the regulators and you've got all the conversations there. There's a lot of education in this asset class still to be done.
Sure.
And
especially in that corporate world and a proper publicly listed markets world. I mean, you referred earlier on to strategy, MicroStrategy, now called Strategy, in the US, and they've kind of blazed a trail over there, Michael Saylor. But it's still, the UK seems to me quite a few years behind in terms of just broader understanding and knowledge, particularly in the capital markets.
I think the UK, under the surface and completely unknown, has a significant amount of people who understand Bitcoin, businesses who understand Bitcoin, and are allocating in spite of a difficult regulatory environment by working with the likes of a BBN and understanding how you can account for it and how you can do everything absolutely correctly. Yeah. Because it is the most verifiable, most auditable asset class there's ever been. Yeah. So people are doing things right, but they're not wanting to publicly talk about it as much because it tends to be met with discrimination, banking.
Right, yeah.
Like if you're not comfortable that your bank's going to allow you to carry on banking with them if you state it publicly,
you get debanked and you're running a business and you can't pay your bills or receive income. That's a disaster, right?
Yeah.
So just trying to navigate around that as well, just for the average. Because I'm just thinking as well, there's almost thinking of like verticals. You are executive recruitment, but this strategy could be deployed by anything. A restaurant chain, a coffee bar chain, a accountancy, a financial planning business. You could have all different companies deploying your model that you've kind of blazed a trail on. And if you assume all the things that you're assuming and benefiting from that upside, if you're allocating capital, I'm not talking about making an IPO or a public listing, but just generally deploying that strategy, and you're putting your spare capital into an asset which is going to grow at 30% is the key thing. That in itself creates a whole lot of interesting dynamics. I mean, we know things are tough out there in the kind of SME, small business world right now. There's a lot of headwinds coming at businesses that we all know about, well publicized. This could be something worth investigating for certain companies.
I think the least risky thing every single business in the UK could do today is just have a read or watch What's the Problem by
Right.
Joe Bryan.
Right.
40 minutes of the time.
Yeah.
And then just put the pipes in place to be able to allocate some cash to Bitcoin, should you choose to do so at a later date.
Right.
Because when everybody's trying to do that, it might become more, the speed and all that kind of thinking, how do you do it? You don't want to make any mistakes if you decided to do it in the future. So studying it now before you make any decisions is the most important thing for them to do.
Yeah.
But when you talk about other industries, I think we have a real opportunity with our industry, executive search,
Right.
in that there's low overheads. It's uncorrelated to Bitcoin, i.e. our revenues have gone up over years where the Bitcoin price has tracked down. And if the revenue goes down in a business in our industry, the costs also follow. So the revenue and the costs track up and down due to the performance-based pay structure. So there's a real opportunity in our industry to say, we want to create the best place to join as a consultant, best group to join as a company if you're looking for a long-term exit or you want to join a group that's got these advantages. Or just as importantly, and I would be just as happy with it, here's how to copy us. Would you like to copy us?
Right.
Because if our industry can demonstrate that, we speak to other industries anyway. And the reason I've done this and gone publicly is partly because I really believe that the UK is beginning to feel suffering from the effects of inflation, and that's people and that's businesses.
Sure.
If you're a young person, and in our industry, there's a lot of young people coming into the industry, and you're ambitious and you want to earn and you want to buy a house, that gets harder and harder and harder every single year.
Yeah.
And until we address that problem and start discussing what the solutions are to that problem, we're in a very difficult situation. Now, the solution to that is in my opinion, not having a central issue of a currency who can increase the currency supply without expending any energy and to no limit in effect. That's what the sole reason we suffer from inflation is increasing the money supply. Now, if you look at every business in the UK, second order effect of why I'm speaking about it publicly, because it's probably not a benefit to me in the long term.
Right.
I know, I believe Bitcoin's going to be worth £1 million in the next 4 to 8 years. So why have I put nearly 10 of them for an IPO and left it to a public company?
Yeah, right.
That's a conversation that family might have with me. Is every business in the UK studying this and doing this, I believe is important for the future of those UK businesses. My favourite Italian restaurant, who I have a conversation about this, they're passing it down to their children, all the children working in that restaurant. But if they're suffering from increased business rates, increased taxes, and a decrease in the value of the pound that they're holding and purchasing power, and they can find a solution with that with a small allocation to Bitcoin over the next 10 years, that might just be the reason they're able to hand that restaurant down to their kids in 30, 40, 50 years.
Right.
And that's why I believe it's really important to have the conversation. But if there's a restaurant group, like let's go the opposite end of the hospitality spectrum. If Wetherspoons allocate their reserve cash to Bitcoin and then start accepting it in all their bars and pubs around the country, they will end up gravitating the community to their bars and having meetups. But they also might build a balance sheet that's strong enough to then start buying other companies in the group and doing a buy and build. So it doesn't really matter what industry you look at, law firms, the model, accountancy firms. I think it's especially geared for my industry because it's sales motivation focused. But all industries, I think, will follow. And it won't be a winner takes all environment. It might be those who start earliest get the most market share when it comes to that point. But there's nothing to stop anybody joining the Bitcoin network and allocating £1, £5 or £10 of cash to Bitcoin. So there's no limit to the amount of businesses that can.
I get it. I mean, certainly the entrepreneurs that I know, by definition, by nature, they're curious. That you wouldn't start a business if you weren't sort of curious and look into things and trying to find new ideas, new innovations. To be fair, I think there is still some hesitancy around this whole concept of the authorities. If you've got a board of directors, if you've got other shareholders who haven't sort of drank the Kool-Aid, don't really understand it. It can be a bit of an uphill battle to do it. But I think the important thing here is not necessarily to sort of be banging a drum about Bitcoin. That's kind of where you get to. It's really that you've done, very eloquently, Scott, is just to explain the problem. And every business owner that I speak to, if you say your money, any spare capital you've got is losing value, everyone agrees that, everyone knows that, and everyone kind of shrugs their shoulders and say, well, there's not a lot I can do about it. I've got to keep liquid. I've got to keep capital. So I think and you mentioned earlier on Joe Bryant's video. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. I think that's very enlightening for anyone who just wants to understand a bit more, not necessarily about all the whys and wherefores about Bitcoin, but really understanding the core essence of the problem, which is about the money system.
Hi, just a quick pause. If you're getting value from this episode, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit subscribe and leave a rating or a review. It's honestly the best way to support the show, to help more people find it, and to make sure that future episodes get even better based on your feedback. Thanks for being here, and now back to the show.
Yeah. And until you have a true understanding of the problem, you can't understand the solution.
Right.
Or until you have a true understanding of the problem, you can't find the solution. And I think you also need to couple in with that urgency and need, which business owners find first. I think they feel the need and they feel the urgency because they feel the responsibility to their staff and to the future of the business.
Sure.
They've got a lot more on the line. But
Sure.
Yeah, what else are you supposed to do with surplus cash in the UK? I mean, you can run a business with surplus cash in there and you can try and invest it in other companies and buy shares in other businesses, but that takes on a huge amount of risk.
Yep.
You could try and invest it and hold it in gold, but that adds security risk for the staff. If you're buying a safe and you're filling it full of gold in your office, it's not dividable. You can't sell a little bit if you need some for cash. It's difficult to borrow against. It's difficult to transport if you wanted to move it. And from a actual property, the more traditional,
people often buy property.
Put property in the pension trust, rent the business, rent the office off the pension trust or whatever it might be. That comes with, what if the building's empty? What if the tax rates rise? What if the building next door becomes dilapidated and my building's not worth as much? And what if I need 100 grand or something for cash flow this month? I can't sell a bit of it. And it takes a long time to wind in and wind out of a property transaction as well. So for service-based businesses are the ones I think will understand this first and probably adopt this first. You say you've got to convince a board, but there's a significant amount of SMEs in the country that don't, and there's a significant amount of businesses that are owned by one or two individuals who will get it. And it's not about convincing someone to go to the level of conviction I went to. It's just having the opportunity to do it and studying it a little bit might be the thing that gives you some energy to say, we're going to lock in long-term value of the future here.
Sure. So where do you go from here? What's the ambition, if we're speaking 3-5 years plus from now, in terms of your listed business?
So we want to be the globally recognized international executive recruitment firm powered by Bitcoin. So we're backed by Bitcoin. We've got a balance sheet that's holding Bitcoin. What that means
do you have an ambition for the number of Bitcoin that you will want to hold within the next few years?
We would like to, as soon as possible, get to the 1,000 Bitcoin mark.
Right.
And I suppose from a point of view of operational growth, they work hand in hand. So the more people we attract to the operating business, the more revenue we generate, more profit we generate. Let's just give you the worst case scenario, middle case scenario, best case scenario.
Okay.
If there's no access to capital markets and there's no access to the convertible bond market and we're organic, then we believe that with a conservative hiring strategy that we have in place for this year, we will be at a point where we can increase the Bitcoin holdings by 25% and then start scaling that up. As a base case, if the Bitcoin price starts climbing at 30% throughout this year and the capital markets are open, we see benchmarks to hit of 500 Bitcoin to begin preparing for an uplisting to an either AIM or LSE marketplace,
Right.
and 1,000 Bitcoin as a benchmark to really consider the LSE and wider options that
Full
become
London Stock
available
Exchange listing.
at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, 1,000 Bitcoin, and if you assume that, I mean, just trying to do the maths now, because of this compounding effect, again, 1,000 Bitcoin compounded at 30%, if you assume that, which obviously impacts your market cap, the company. So, I mean, you quite rapidly get to a significant, like hundreds of millions, potentially, of overall market cap. I mean, I'm not sure who are the biggest recruitment companies, listed recruitment companies. Hayes Group, I think, and
Hayes, Michael Page, but they don't really operate in our space. We would always term ourselves as
specialist
higher
executive
quality of
right.
results
Okay.
and search. But yeah, then you've got Shrek firms, Corn Ferries, and these sort of businesses. So
Right.
if you zoned in on executive search, then you're looking at about 40 billion per annum, I think, in revenues.
Right.
And you're looking at businesses that have got a market cap of between 700 million and 2 billion globally.
Right.
We operate internationally. So.
Sure.
But the future of this business, we are sector agnostic and regionally agnostic. So the talent that we attract, we can plug in new industries. We'd like to open up an investment banking division. We don't like to open up divisions that really fit and complement the business model. But at the moment, with professional services, business advisory, logistics, life sciences, AI intelligence, regardless of what's happening in on the other side of the business with a Bitcoin balance sheet, those markets are growing markets. So it's uncorrelated revenue.
Right.
And we have sector agnostic, regional agnostic growth strategy in that when one industry is seen as a high performing industry, we can move somebody into that industry. If the UK, as has already happened in our business, when the UK economic environment isn't as productive as the US economic environment or the European or the Middle East, then we move and focus on those areas. So we're nimble enough and adaptable enough to protect the business, if you like, against global macro movements.
Sure. Yeah.
But we've also got a growth strategy that allows us to accelerate the scale in which we've been growing over the last 4 years. And we have serious ambitions for the revenue and the profit, but I'm not able to go into detail on that as
Right. Sure. No, I get
forward-looking
it.
statement with numbers and times attached to it. But yeah, we're really looking forward to growing, and we're hoping to positively disrupt our industry.
It sounds amazing, honestly. I love new ideas, innovation. To see you're sort of combining this technology, this sort of store of value and called Bitcoin, with your strategic business objectives. I'm fascinated by what you've done so far. I mean, it's the first person I'm certainly on this podcast I've spoken to who's basically taken their own company, the private company, taken it public. That's a hell of a story and a journey in itself. So, I mean, congratulations on everything you've done there. I know it wouldn't have been an easy journey, but you're there now. You're publicly listed. Your shares are available for people to buy. And I just think it's a really intriguing, interesting story for anyone that tunes into this podcast who's really focused on the small business, growing business, and hopefully very ambitious for their own companies and their own businesses. This is helpful and relevant to those people. Just as we kind of wrap up towards the end, just a couple of questions. You mentioned a video, which we'll put a link to in the show notes. Any other resources or books or videos or podcasts or anything you would suggest that people want to learn a bit more about this? Where should they go and find out?
Yeah, I mentioned What's the Problem by Joe Bryan. I would say the Bitcoin Business Network, run by the Bitcoin Collective, is a great place to meet people and have conversations directly about strategy and work out what works for you. And then our non-exec director, Vijay Selvam, who was on calls with Ben Bernanke through the recovery from the Lehman Brothers financial crash when he was at Goldman Sachs on how do we get the economy back going. And I think that really took him on a journey to understand the ill effects of inflating the money supply, and he became a gold bug after that,
Right.
and then became a Bitcoiner. So I think his book, Principles of Bitcoin, is a great read for people in business who have a good understanding of the economy and wider macro environments that takes through that story and helps you understand it. And then our business,
Yep.
XCE Connecting Excellence Group, our website xce.io, we've bolted on a Bitcoin executive recruitment division. So we're working with Bitcoin businesses that are looking for senior level talent, either from within the space or traditional space, that are looking to move into that area. And also companies who are looking to understand a little bit more about Bitcoin and maybe want to make a hire of somebody in a fractional or a consulting or a full-time role to come in and just assess the business and give a recommendation of here's what you could do, here are what the options are. So
and what about if
in the space.
are you available if someone just finds this really interesting, intriguing? Can people reach out to you, Scott? I know you're a busy man, but are you on social, LinkedIn, or whatever? Is it something that people can, if they can grab 10 minutes with you?
Yeah, Scott Ellam on LinkedIn.
Or I'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Scott Ellam.
Okay.
And my handle is still BTC only Scott.
Okay. Right.
And then the company on LinkedIn, XCE official, and then the company on XCE official.
All right. We'll get links to all those in the show notes. Last question I ask everyone. This is going to be intriguing.
Go ahead.
Intriguing for you with all the journey that you've been on. I ask everyone about the concept of wealth, and what I mean by is, what is true wealth? You know, everyone's got a different definition of true wealth. What's true wealth to you, Scott?
Buying time. And that brings me back to the asset class.
Right. Okay.
If you believe that the value of your money is going to increase over the long term and forever, then without spending it, you're buying time. And I think from the point of view of true wealth, I think being able to spend time doing what you love doing and being with family and friends and being around people you love, that's true wealth.
Absolutely, well said. Scott Ellam, congratulations on everything you've achieved, and I wish you all the best for the future. Thanks so much. Cheers.